So my skeptical mind, and that's just who I am, my skeptical mind goes to, well, yeah, of course, you've got this guy over here that's logical and reasonable, and you got this guy over here that's wearing a tinfoil hat. Of course the tinfoil hat guy's going to see a lot of stuff, right? He's like imagining it, or he's watched one too many sci-fi movies.
But it's used to help us frame hypotheses for UFO propulsion, power, stealth, weaponry.
Everything that we experience is very positive.
Sometimes the field of ufology has a short memory span.
We didn't know anything about the $22 million back then. We just kind of thought, well, this is, and I think that was the reason why they were looking for military-type people, because in the military, you work with whatever you got, no matter what the situation is. You just kind of adapt and overcome.
Well, good evening, my friends. This is Erica Lukes. Happy to be here on UFO Classified. I want to thank all of my supporters and friends from all over the world who get in here every week. Phil, Northern UFOs, all the people that really, truly support my show. And by the way, both of them have been on the show before because I think so much of them. But I want to thank all of you for listening. And I'm always amazed at how many people really are listening and keeping track, not only keeping track of me to see what I'm going to say next, but, people that are understanding that there is much more to UFOs, much more to this subject than meets the eye. And unfortunately, what I have been kind of learning over my years of speaking at different conferences and being involved with different organizations is there is a very ugly undercurrent in this UFO field. And for a long, long time, I have tried to broach other people in the topic who are leaders, are alleged leaders in the field. And I've said, how are we going to make a change so we don't have issues with overt sexual discrimination, sexual harassment? How are we going to make a change so we're not dealing with racism and we're not attracting some of these people that are absolutely just incredibly filled with hate? And every one of these people, every one of them, and I could name names. They know who they are. Every one of them said, nope, I'm sorry, nothing can change. We're not going to change anything. And one person who hosts conferences, who, is supposedly love and light, said to me that they would not address it because, we're going in such a positive direction. Now we're talking about, we're dealing with all of these enlightened beings and yada, yada, yada. And to those people, I want to say, shame on you for allowing this subject to become such a dirty, dirty place. A couple days ago, I watched a video that was posted, a video between Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. And at the very end of this little video where Jeremy's talking about all of his accomplishments and things that are coming up next that only, he has access to, he threw out the slogan, "True Patriots and Americans." And as we know, this is quite the little dog whistle. And that was thrown out there just a few days after the assault where 5 people were killed in our United States Capitol. What I want to say to each and every one of you is the more I look into this and the more I see that stations like Coast to Coast bring on people that support this rhetoric, people who have nothing to do with ufology, but are instilling some very dangerous ideologies into the subject. They are creating this atmosphere, and UFO community is ground zero for instilling some of these ideas and promoting things that are, like I said, dangerous. And this is not okay. And so it's interesting because I took that little quote. Some people might not think it means, anything other than what it means, but there are some hidden meanings. And this took me to a Facebook page. And then, of course, this Facebook page is all about anti-masking. And then it took me to a website, and I want to read a little bit of what it says on this website when, with regard to, true Americans and patriots. It says, "Are you willing to fight and die if need be for the values, principles, freedoms, liberties, and rights that you believe in. It is not possible to unite a nation that is divided by spiritual and philosophical differences. You cannot unite those who are opposed to corruption and perversion and those who approve of and promote corruption and perversion. Water and oil does not mix. The United States is irrevocably divided. It is divided into three camps, which are the left camp, the Dems, liberals, progressives, socialists, anarchists. The camp consists of those who embrace immoral and a godless society, who promote to politicize and glorify the LGBT community, pushing it to the public domain and demands for the public at large to embrace it. Those who want the big government to give them everything and take care of them. The mainstream media is their voice. I could go on with that one, but I think that you get that. And then in the, when it says in the left camp, they're saying that goes, not all Democrats are socialists, but all socialists are Democrats. Not all liberals, progressives, and socialists are anarchists, but all anarchists are liberals. Here's the right camp, according to this website. The right camp is full of Republicans, conservatives, traditionalists, devout Christians, Catholics, and Jews. The camp consists of those who believe in God, those who believe in traditional family values, those who believe in the national sovereignty. Okay, so that is where Jeremy Corbell's little statement led me, is to a website with that. And you know, like I said, I do more research and I see that this is a field that is supposed to be evolved, full of love and light, full of a want to understand what we're dealing with. But instead, we find ourselves mixed in with Holocaust deniers, anti-Semites, people that are absolutely vile. And that is why I felt it's just so important for me to bring on my guest tonight. I have a great deal of respect for him. I just love him. We actually had the privilege of meeting at a conference. So this is going to be a very enlightening discussion. But I want to add a little bit more here, because we talk about the racism and the hate. And interestingly enough, I found online on Justia.com a case where Robert Bigelow, Diane Bigelow, Bigelow Holding Company, was involved with two men, Bullard and Hammer, who took them to court, and the jury clearly agreed that the Bigelow Holding Company fired them because Bullard objected to the company policy of discriminating against African Americans. It says here that I'm reading from this article, substantial testimony supports the finding that Bigelow had a longstanding policy of racial discrimination. Clearly, discriminating against tenants because of their race violates the public policy of Nevada. And this is how one of these people was terminated. And so this question was asked to Bullard, and he describes, how were you terminated? And it said, we had 3 black males come on the property. Carol Swenson, who worked for Bigelow, radioed Donna Dahlman on her radio and said, this person said, blacks have rights too. Approximately 5 to 10 minutes passed. Donna came into the office. Carol and 638, here, and I'm just reading this verbatim, Donna conversed. I don't know what they said. Donna walks up to where I'm sitting, to this man who's saying that blacks have rights, picks up a piece of paper and said, what is your... And I quote, I said, I don't have a problem. She said, I think you do. She said, sit your goddamn stool, shut your mouth, and do work. That is a direct quote, and I'm using exactly the same words that were used to this man. What happened next? Then she said, on second thought, us out of here. I don't want you working here anymore. So, that is what happened. Bigelow Holding Company, you can find this information. As I said, I'm reading this online, Justia.com. And Phil, I love your comments. But so there's a problem here, and the people that we are holding up to a high standard have fallen miserably below that standard. And unless we get a clue, we're not going to make a change. And unless we make a change, we're not going to really, truly begin to understand what is going on with what we all want to focus on, the phenomenon, what is taking place. But we have to expose these dark, deep cracks and the filth that resides in them before we can do that. So I am going to tell you this is going to be a good show tonight. Thank you for hearing that. I apologize for the excessive profanity. But as I said, I was just quoting from somebody who clearly has a lot of professional integrity. My guest this evening is Barry Littleton. And I am super, super stoked to have him here. This is going to be great. He's a graduate in psychology, sociology, and ethnic studies. He graduated from Wichita State University. He has, for the last 2 decades, been involved with an administration for at-risk youth, including cognitive behavior modification, managing aggressive behavior. And he has also researched and practiced several aspects of spiritual, metaphysical, and the paranormal. We met at Asceti Ranch a few years ago. I think, Barry, when was that? Was that 3 years ago?
Yeah, it was 2017.
Wow. You know, it's definitely, that was such a great time. I had a wonderful time there, and I want to just go back to a moment that you and I shared, and we talked about this, I believe, on my last show, but it's been so long, and I've got a ton of new listeners. I want to just mention this, but you know, we were sitting there and we were watching a certain person who is proud QAnon person that kind of came out of the woodwork, and we were sitting there watching his lecture, and his lecture was slick. I mean, it was very nicely done. But you had all these beautiful visual images, and he's talking about health and wellness and love and light, and then all of a sudden you have a picture of a crowd, and the picture's in black and white. The only thing in color is the Nazi flag. Okay, strange. You know, I kept thinking to myself, what is going on? And then, you know, a few slides later, here we have a photo, a brilliant, beautiful photo of Adolf Hitler with one of his quotes. And you and I both looked at each other, and we were with Craig Lang, God rest his soul.
Yes.
And we all looked at each other, and I think we were all in shock because it was so blatantly in your face, and it was just disgusting. And this is a person who has spoken at a majority of these conferences. So, I mean, what do you think about this?
You know, if I recall correctly, excuse me, we got up and walked out of that lecture.
Yeah,
I do believe.
Yeah, we did.
I couldn't stand it. But that's the problem. You know, speaking earlier, you had mentioned how the field of ufology and New Age, but it seems like especially ufology, is just being targeted right now. Targeted by trolls, targeted by people that preach hate, and also very racially divided. It's always been that way since the beginning. Now, you know, when I bring this up, people want to try to act like that's not the case. And, I don't see colors. No, I can't stand it when people tell me that. Come on. Yeah, you do. You have on a certain color, you just wear whatever color. Come on. You know, little things like that. But the fact that people don't want to really address the fact that, like, for me, as being a contactee, a real one that wasn't involved in any secret space program or any governmental activity. But the problem was in my youth, when I'm on into adulthood, teenage years, trying to find something in the media that was mimicking my type of contact experiences. There wasn't reptiles, wasn't grays. I wasn't part of the government, not the military. My experiences weren't like that at all. But most importantly, I didn't see anyone that looked like me, a melanin-dominant black male, or black people at all that were talking about this outside of Barney Hill. You know, and my experiences weren't like his, so that takes it to another level. But I'll just stop there and I'll let you go on. But hopefully I addressed what you were saying there.
No, absolutely. And I mean, it's just, it is amazing when you go to these conferences and stuff. I mean, it's like you're surrounded by, and no offense to my friends who are 70-year-old white men, because I love you all. But when you go to these conferences, that is a majority of who is there. And so, you know, for me as a woman trying to break into this and rile a few feathers. That was an interesting experience. I received a lot of discrimination, a lot of really hate, but I can't imagine how.
I witnessed some of that.
Yeah, you did?
I witnessed some of that. Yeah, I witnessed it. It was horrible, it was ugly, and it was unnecessary. And it takes away from everything that you're trying to do in terms of they're tripping on that as opposed to the information you're presenting, which is very much not mainstream, not cookie cutter. And that's what we need right now. So.
Yeah, and I'm really glad, because that was such an interesting experience. We were at this conference and there was a certain person there that was very nasty and said some things that I guess maybe at a later date I'll have to talk about. I know I might have talked about it on a different show, but it's, it was very special, but, and had links to Coast, but, I just, I can't imagine how you feel. And you have told me before that you have received death threats.
Well, I'll just put it to you like this. A couple of times I was definitely encouraged to shut my mouth. And it was by nothing more than haters, nothing more than that, but I mean, it is what it is. It's kind of like, in some ways, you watched Jesse Jackson run for president a long time ago, and everybody knew he wasn't going to get it. But yet there was a black man that stuck his neck out and gave the way for another brother to try.
Right.
So when I come forward, it would be, if nothing else, a lot of other ethnic people, whether it be melanin dominant, African American, Mexican, Hispanic, Asian, it doesn't matter. As long as that it brings more to come forward. It promotes more to come forward. And the more we start communicating, that's really this great disclosure, this great awakening everybody's talking about. I hear so much about disclosure, and we can forget about thinking that the government's ever going to tell us anything. And we see so much on History Channel about ancient aliens. Well, let's talk about current aliens, all of us that are having contact, because I'm not alone. I mean, I'm one of what I always knew. I suspected it was over 70% of our population was having contact, and more than half was unaware of it. Now, after coming forward and communicating with so many people, I can say that I definitely was right when looking at some of the research done by the Free Organization, the contact modalities run by Ray Hernandez. They're doing great research on true contactees and experiencers. And you'll find that the whole thing that they're finding on the data through thousands of people they've interviewed is not at all like what we're hearing in the media.
And these are the things that are important to get forward. And I really, and it stinks to always have to carry the freaking torch, and to stand up there and say, wait a minute, this is unethical. Wait a minute, this is, and because I've done that, and I know you've done that as well. It's like, you get these people who are clearly guilty of some of this stuff I'm talking about who, oh, you're just a troublemaker. You're just, doing this and that. And it's just like, no, I'm just a person that has a moral compass and that cares about the subject and cares about people.
But then they hide behind the guru thing, like they're gurus. And there's this big thing that comes along with being a contactee or experiencer, whatever you want to call it. That means suddenly you must be like Paramahansa Yogananda and you must be a guru. And that's anything but the case. I'm certainly no guru. I mess up all the time. I've studied a lot of stuff. I've had a lot of experiences, and I've practiced a lot of stuff, tried a lot of stuff, as far as spiritually and things to try to yield results here in the third dimension. But I'm still no master, no guru, nothing like that. But I'm seeing people using that because it's all about getting famous right now and making money. And this is a field that is really, I don't know, it's uncharted and it's also unregulated. So in that way, it attracts those that are, one, mentally ill, 2, just straight liar, delusional, 3, these people that are just evil and backstabbing like no other and just full of BS, and I mean, so when you get those 4 components, with being those 3 or 4 components, with being just a contactee, which is weird enough as it is. And for me, Erica, I'm long past the point of saying, oh, my name's Barry Littleton. I'm a contactee. Please believe me. Man, I don't give a damn if people believe me or not. Well, who I am speaking to are other people that have had experiences, and also, excuse my language, I don't mean to cuss there.
Oh well, you heard me in the opening there.
Sorry, and also addressing the true scientific community and bringing the scientific community and the contactee arena together. And that's separate, because in that way, the scientific community doesn't take ufology or New Age. They don't take that serious, but for me, and my experiences were so profound and they were physical that science was the only real foundation I had to understand them. Now, it doesn't explain everything, but at least gives you a foundation, a baseline to work with for what you're experiencing. So, real quick, I'll say this, and for me, and I took a little heat on this. People got upset because I made the comment. It's some joke about it, some don't. But for me, whenever I would hear about the Pleiades, they always look like, I don't know, maybe Fabio, Kevin Sorbo as Hercules, maybe Christy Brinkley on National Lampoon Vacation. I was looking for the red Ferrari. But all the Pleiadians were always described as looking like that and illustrated looking like that. So that's very discouraging for somebody that's melanin dominant. We're like, well, is there anybody in space that looks like me? Anybody that's melanin dominant, black, ethnic? And that leads that. So then when you go to these conferences, you see that very thing. And I will say something, Erica, that I saw before the COVID era hit us, like the last conference I went to, which would have been the Expo in Los Angeles. I spoke there. But, I mean, I'm seeing, even at Asceti the last time I was there in 2019, I saw more attendees that were ethnic. It's starting to change. And it's interesting because a lot of those attendees should be up there talking before me or any of the other people up there, but not everybody has the money to go to those conferences. But that's something I very much noticed, is that the tone was changing and there were more ethnic people starting to flourish in. After speaking on that publicly, I had a few people come up to me and say, I've been going to these conferences for a while and I never really thought about it. But you mentioned it, I don't see any black people here, So that's things that, so that starts breaking the ice and things can start changing. It has to change, and that was always Gene Roddenberry's vision for those that really like Star Trek, with Nichelle Nichols on there, George Takei on there. You had the Russian that wasn't really Russian, but he talked good, like the Scotsman. Mm-hmm. You had everybody of different race on board that bridge in command officer positions, showing what it would be like if we go to what Michio Kaku and everybody calls a type 1 civilization, where we're no longer dependent on just the fossil fuels destroying our biosphere to survive. Instead, we move on to the power of this parent star. It becomes the primary power source. And that's when we start becoming more part of a galactic species, So I think that's very interesting. And there's little things we got to get through to. I have a hard time telling people what kind of beings I've experienced. Well, we can't get past the ethnic thing here, the color confrontation here. And then I got to try to describe people what it's like to be around beings that are non-corporeal, non-physical, what that feels like. We got to expand our modalities in order to incorporate more views. It's imperative at this point of our evolution. Because I'll be quiet now, but I'll tell you, this place is in trouble. We can see that. Right now, this world is in trouble. And maybe it's more the custodians of it that's in trouble, humanity.
Right. And it's always just sad to me that, like I said, I think the UFO community, it's on the outside, it is, promoting this love and light. No, we're going to meditate, and, it's universal peace, and the tall white Nordics are here to preach about, they're the beautiful Nazis and, the superior race, and, it's just like, then you get deeper and deeper, and you see that, this community has been so corrupted by, I'm sure by people in the intelligence community, by, like you said, people that are mentally ill, people that are just preying upon vulnerable people. And I really think, when you have a series of experiences, you are vulnerable because you don't know what's going on. You have no place to turn. And so you turn into this, turn to the UFO community, get sucked up into this matrix of, I don't even know what, just garbage.
Oh, it's so disappointing.
Garbage. It is. Disappointing. And it's like we're so easily, when we have experiences like this, we're just so easily manipulated because we want answers. And I will tell you, there are no answers that you will get in the mainstream UFO community. You're going to get more confused, and it's just, we have to kind of push away from that and find credible people and people that are not the usual talking heads to deliver information. So
yes. It's kind of like I mentioned the Pleiadian things and while looking like Fabio. I had every now and again I'll post what I consider a joke, like on Facebook or something. Of course, my mother said I had no sense of humor, so who knows? But it was it was from the early '90s. There was the Fabio workout where he's kind of just shaking his hair and not really doing nothing. I posted something that said, "I'm doing the Pleiadian workout." People got some people got really upset. That's not true, Barry. Some of them have black hair. Oh, gee, thanks. That makes me feel better. But but in light of something that I did find out later on is I think it's the Strong brothers from Australia that were the first to present this. But you have Aboriginal elders presenting artifacts and saying some of their legends, and some of the things is that they are saying that they were seeded here from the Pleiades. And that the first Pleiadians here were black, looked just like them. They were extremely dark. So, but we don't ever hear that. You know what I mean? That's never made it to the mainstream. It's just suppressed. But that's important. That's important to know how that goes on into some of these Native American tribes. Also were interacting with melanin dominant black extraterrestrials. And these areas of space we don't hear about. Like the Triangulum Galaxy, a different galaxy that's about to merge with Andromeda and the Milky Way. The beings that are coming from there that are not just from these places in space that we hear about in New Age, which is always Pleiades or Sirius or, Lyra, these places. But really, we have, not just trillions of galaxies they found. But I was talking to a quantum physicist last week, and I asked, he works on the Hubble telescope. And I said, how many galaxies are there actually now? How many trillion? And he says, well, actually, we're doing it now by planets. How many planets are in the universe? And I said, how many? He says, well, we've got 10 to the 80th power. So that's 10 with 80 zeros behind it. Okay. That's heavy. We have to start expanding parameters that into trillions of galaxies, and we've got a lot more going on in terms of contact, interdimensional, and extraterrestrial that goes beyond just what we're hearing in the New Age and ufology communities, which is dominating a lot of people's experiences. What can you tell me where I came from? What star race? You can't tell. And you know how hard that is when you look out there and you've got extra galactic contact. The beings I dealt with were telling me places that were so far out. You know what I mean? I didn't understand the terminologies that they're putting in my mind. I had to really try to, and I thought I was. And when I was a kid, I thought I was heavy because, I watched some Doctor Who, I watched science fiction, so I thought I was heavy, but I wasn't.
Yeah, it is interesting, and that's one of the things I've talked about this on shows. When you go to different conferences, and here you've got people getting hypnotized in this group, and they're being told that they are these, this type of being from here and there, and blah blah blah, and you just think, oh my God. And then you've got, the religious aspect of that has been, I mean, obviously this has been kind of front and center as well since the late 40s. And to see some of the people that are on the speaking circuit who have these just, completely whacked out viewpoints about UFOs, they're Satan, and we're going to be wiped off the earth. And I remember, and I just want to share this because I think it's so fascinating, but there's a person, and I won't name this person, but he's somebody that some people would know, but I mean, he's very, has had UFO experiences, believes in that, and he also feels that they are, this is a battle between good and evil, and God is here right now, and he is going to take, the women who've had abortions, or, different people who've committed these grave sins and just wipe them off the earth, and things, and, all the homosexuals, and, it's just like, oh my God. And so, there's so many areas where you can get sucked into this, and you can have your own experience, but then you can have, person A, B, C, and D telling you that this is angels or God, or, just based on their own personal crap. And I think that is just so, it's just not a good thing, I think, in a lot of ways. So that's my thought on that.
Well, check this out. I'll throw something to kind of just add to that, if that's cool.
You know it.
Okay, well, they're finding out number-wise, computation-wise, in quantum physics that the universe is designed for life to thrive, to discover its creator. So it's designed to emerge life in order to thrive and discover its creator. So that kind of incorporates what the divine field actually is and how we can work with the divine field. But also in dealing with something like, quickly, just breaking this down with what they call the quantum hologram of consciousness, which is actually that when you deal with one of these wormholes, whatever goes through it creates a copy on the surface of it, and a thing that's called the Mako, which actually holds the information. So that means that these black holes, these wormholes, Makos, are actually like the hard drive of the universe, informational storage devices. Totally different way of viewing these things, all right? So Sorry, I think I just blanked out there. Sorry, my computer went down there a little bit. You still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Sorry, okay, yeah, sorry, we're having a kind of a bad windstorm here. It's messing with things a little bit. So, yeah. Anyway. So as far as I was talking about the quantum hologram and how that information stored. So when we're dealing with civilizations that would be like what they call a type 2 or a type 3, type 4 civilizations that are so advanced that they're probably no longer in existence. But when they get to that area, to that level, they're starting to use these wormholes as their primary power source. So that means a lot of these civilizations may be gone, but they're interacting with us through these quantum holograms and through our brains. So that means if we're getting saturated constantly with grays, anal probes, reptiles, all this stuff that is not even maybe true to the phenomenon itself. For example, that Ray Hernandez Foundation, out of the thousands of people they surveyed, it found that overwhelmingly 70% of the contact experiences are positive. That's not what we hear. Mm-hmm. We hear negativity stuff only. So when you're saturated, your brain is saturated with all these negative images, negative connotations. When you start having, through your psychic experiences, through your life energy, you start having one of these experiences with what might be higher beings, your brain interprets how the experience goes and influences it. This is very serious. It's the same thing in hypnosis. If I take somebody down to theta, real deep, I can tell them I'm Shaquille O'Neal. And when I emerge them, I look like Shaq to them for a little bit till it wears off. So that's the power of autosuggestion. It's very strong.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to get weird with the science, but
No,
I think
no.
that's important when we're dealing with these civilizations that are so far advanced, and what it's like when they're interacting with those of us here on Earth, really. How is it, when they're coming to you in the dream state? I've talked to so many people now that say they have an experience at night and their husband or wife was just knocked out. And they have all this stuff happen at night. And I said, well, what did they think about it? Oh, I didn't tell them about it. Well, why not? Well, I don't want them to think I'm crazy. But they're having experiences that are changing their life. And don't have anybody to talk to. That's serious.
I know, you're right. Absolutely. Oh, my gosh.
For me, and I'll be quiet at this, but for me and at the point I'm at, like I said, it doesn't matter if people believe me or not. I'm not going for that crowd. I'm trying to talk to the people that are already contactees and the scientists as well, because to me, if we're having these experiences, it's not about ancient aliens, it's current aliens, and how can this affect and benefit our daily lives? If it doesn't benefit our daily lives, it's not doing anybody any good. So that's where I'm at now. These technologies need to start being listened to, discovered, or not hidden, the ones that are, things of that nature that are going to help us become a type 1 civilization. We need to go forward and save this planet and save our race. It's important. Our species, excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. I agree with that. And I've got a lot of questions in chat room tonight, which I will be asking. But first of all, I want to just kind of go back and hear your story from the beginning.
All right. I started, I was one of those weird people who was born with what seemed to be past life memories and things of that nature. So I was born kind of awake. I started having experiences as far back as I can remember, but they seem to get really intense around 7 years old. I wake up at night not being in my room, and I'd be in some school. And the school, I've heard people since call it the mystery school. It's something where you start, using things in your mind, like a feather, moving a feather on this table. Then there's water there. You got to try to stir the water with your mind. And then there are these metal balls that you can levitate. So that's something there. And I would be there at night sometimes. And then in the next day, I'd be so tired at school. And then going forward, but those are things you can't change, you can't prove. And although it seems real, it could be imagination, kids' imagination, who knows, But then I had what's called the acid rain experience in the 6th grade. I woke up and I was on board this craft and interacting with a being that had been coming around and playing with me occasionally. And I think it says something to what these beings can do to your optical nerves, what they do through your optical nerves consciously, because he appeared to be another kid, I thought, at that time. But when I see him on this ship, he does not appear that way. He's in a uniform and it's different. Okay, he looks insectoid-like. But in this deal, I'm seeing these UFO craft and this screen. Looks like we're over some type of a mountain pass, maybe the Rocky Mountain snow pass or the snow pass cascade or the Himalayas, something like that. But I see these two craft in this ship and in the screen, and it looks like they're sucking clouds into their underbellies or something weird like that, like mist going up into them. And this being levitating over here tells me that they're having problems reversing the acid rain, which is bad for our planet. And then he's giving me flashes information about microwaves and metals in our atmosphere that's very, very dangerous. And I mean, especially for them to get out of those ships or to be here on this planet. So that's, it's information that's coming in. And at that time, it's hard to think something back telepathically to these beings because they will answer your questions in your mind before you can formulate them, which is somewhat disturbing, to be quite frank, let alone being in the presence of a non-human. It's really a trip. It's not just like TV, you know what I mean? But anyway, so this is this acid rain thing. Now going forward, maybe about a week, I'm in the 6th grade, and my teacher used to give us this thing called the Scholastic News. And each week somebody have to get up there on Fridays or something, get up there and read it. And read the main article. And I got selected this week. And never forget it, because the main article was about the Statue of Liberty, which was on the front of the magazine. And it was about the Statue of Liberty being closed down, certain parts of it not being toured because they were reconstructing it due to damage from the acid rain, like repainting it or something. And when I saw that word acid rain, that's when there's no doubt that what was a very much waking experience for me at night crossed into my day life. There's no doubt about it. To where I remember yelling that word when I saw people start laughing like I was clowning, but I wasn't. I also tripped out seeing that in actually in writing, because before this experience, I had no idea what that was. It's not part of the science I had learned at school or anything, Anyway, so going forward with that, and after that experience, I was determined to try to maybe get something, try to grab a piece of technology or something to prove what was happening to me. And then the experiences kind of stopped from the age of about 12 and a half, about 13 to about 17. And then they started again. And when they started again, they started like with the vengeance. They came with what I call adult onset experiences. And that involved with several things, but I don't talk about the things that seemed somewhat astral or something. I only talk about the physical experiences that involved missing time, especially because there's 4 of them, but 3 of them, somebody else was with me in terms of they saw the ships, the missing time. And then, it's very disconcerting because when the experience is over, you actually very much remember what just happened. You were on this craft. You were in the presence of these beings or whatever. But the further you get away from the event horizon, the more it starts to fade and the retention of memory becomes difficult. So that's something like, people have something happen. They're like, what just happened? You know what I mean? Even though it starts fading. So it didn't totally completely fade for me, but all the information that was just given during this experience, and especially it was disconcerting because I can still see the beings in my mind's eye. I know I've been in their presence. I can see the technology. I like technology, but yet it starts becoming fragmented the further you get away from the event itself. And that's a frequency thing, an energy thing, a vibrational thing. So anyway, so that's just kind of how that had went down. And then the experiences started modifying at the time I was about 28, 29, going close to 30, and they started becoming more informational exchange, opposed to these physical experiences, with the exception when I went out and spoke at that ranch out there. I got blasted perceptually. That's a interesting land out there. So that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah. You're not kidding.
Does that address kind of what you wanted to know?
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Where did you grow up? Where did you? Hello, can you hear me? Oh God. Hello. Okay, I just was asking you, and I apologize. My, I'm so good with the mute buttons. It's just amazing. I can have this, wonderful conversation with myself and just think, okay. Sometimes that's, it's just the way it rolls pretty much most of the day anyway. But, where did you grow up?
I say, all I'll say is this: in the air capital. I'm from the air capital.
Okay.
Middle of the United States. Yeah.
So were you? Was anybody in your family in the military?
No. Well, my father was when he was younger. My father was a well-known basketball player from my area here. In fact, he would have been probably the 4th African American to play professionally, what is now called the NBA, but back then it was called something different. But the racism was so bad that he stopped enjoying playing so much, and he wound up going into business. So, but he was in the service, like just briefly, but it's nothing connected to my experiences or anything like that. And none of my other family or siblings or anything have been part of the military either.
Interesting. Yeah, that is curious. And so when you had, some of these experiences, did you talk to anyone about them?
No, I as a kid, I hid them. But when I had the adult onset experience, I talked to just a couple people because somebody else was with me. And fortunately, that type of delusion is not shared. So I started communicating with a few people then, but I still was majority hiding it. Maybe 5 people in my life I discussed it with, but I hid it because one is it's not conducive to your career at any stage. And number two would be trying to just go on and live your normal life after experiencing something like that is difficult. What I'm saying is I'm in there, I'm trying to get my degree, and I'm in there, listening to lectures, and I'm looking at looking at the professor. I'm seeing either light coming off of him and thinking, wow, I wonder if he's got some sort of extraterrestrial genes. Or I'm thinking about spacecraft and maybe what the propulsion system I saw was, instead of missing part of the lecture. So things like that are a problem, I think, when you're dealing with just something that's so abnormal and goes against normal perception. So yeah, but so no, I'm this guy. You know this because we talked before, but I never planned on talking. I had so many experiences, and I spent all this time trying to figure them out on top of what I could remember, that I was like, okay, one day I'm gonna tell people about it. I'm gonna talk about it. But the truth is, that was just smoke and mirrors. I was never really going to do it. Yeah. I was trying to enrich myself,
Right.
And then I have this car accident, and I actually had a near-death experience in this car accident. I went through a couple windows in my Trans Am, and I'd actually taken 4 catastrophic traumatic brain injuries, and I died on the way to the hospital. And it took me I was in a coma for about 2.5 weeks. And after awakening, it took about a month to kind of remember who I was and to come back to full. They have a clearing out, which means that the TBI survivor remembers everything. So it's very blessed. They said I'd be a vegetable, but the Creator saw it different, Mm-hmm. But I inadvertently got exposed after that, after my recovery, with a gentleman I was communicating with that had some experiences, and somehow I wound up getting on this show, and I thought nobody would listen, and it just keep going from there. So,
wow.
Yeah, still to this day, I didn't think I'd still be talking about it at this point. The fact that you and I are having this show trips me out. So it's cool,
I know. I'm right there with you. I'm just like, I guess in a way I could have seen this, but it's crazy that after all this time, I'm still here and plugging away, and oh my Lord. But there's something there, something that needs to be done. So that's the way it rolls.
Well, I what I liked is when we first started communicating, and that was before you actually did your presentation in 2017, just the talks we had before that. But you kept bringing up some of the organizations we're familiar with that had individuals in there that were suppressing information, that weren't giving the full facts. And I think that needs to be brought to light a lot. And that's important, So I know you took a lot of heat for that, but I commend you for continuing to go forward.
Well, thank you. It's been fun. I've definitely, got a few gray hairs over all of this, but luckily we've got, we can take care of that with a little dye, and it's all good. But I mean, yeah, it's been such a trip to go through all of these things and to see, and I feel very lucky that I've had the ability to see clearly through things, and I can step back and, put together the pieces of the puzzle with regard to different organizations and people in the field, and people who have, been in the field for decades. And it's a really fascinating thing. And it really does kind of circle back to a handful of people. And that are controlling the narrative. And it's funny because the people that are pushing out information and pretending like they're the ones who are bringing disclosure are actually the ones who are pushing us further from it. And I just find that so interesting. Yes. That I had actually presented at that Asceti Ranch the year before I met you, also in 2016, and that was the first conference of that type I'd ever presented at. And it was unexpected to a degree. But, that crowd that I spoke with the first time, there were several individuals that were on that panel that are just miserable individuals and have no right calling themselves self-masters or anything like that. And that's when I started finding out that 90% of the people on these panels are full of crap. I mean, it was full of crap. I knew it was going to be like that a little bit,
but I didn't think it was going to be that bad. And, and I watch now several of those individuals now are at the top of these conference circuits, and they're the ones people want to talk to. And, some of them are extreme drunks. Some of them are just rude. Some of them are racist, hiding it. I met an individual. I won't name this individual. They're no longer with us. But I met him that year in 2016, and I could feel, obviously, I read body language, kinesics, but I also read micro expressions quite well. And micro expressions are hard to hide. And the micro expressions I caught coming off this male when I just asked a question during their presentation, when they were taking questions, it was obvious. This gentleman was a racist, but no one would talk about that. And God forbid he say anything about, any of these individuals, like they're just held up on these pedestals. And I'll tell you, half of them will tell you that they're contactees and experiencers. But I'll tell you something. There is something that I call, now I did steal this word, Artron energy. I stole that word from the Doctor Who series. But what I think that is Artron energy is what I call this energy that is present on board these craft, and some of the beings have it also. And when I say that, like this crafts I've been on, they're like grown over a wormhole, a micro wormhole, a singularity. So they're organic. But that means that the engine itself is like temporally displaced. Okay, so it's like a different type of a deal going on there as far as the dimensions, like the outside and inside, are not in the same dimension. So these engine have this type of some type of a radiation, I think, that irradiates us when we're on board the craft. And some of the beings have it too. It's like this life energy is what it runs off. Now, I can only speak of the craft I've been on board, all right, and the beings I've dealt with. But there's like this life energy that's running it. Our science calls it orgone energy, or they call it prana, things of that nature, all right? But these are actually, some type of creator energy is what it is. Anyway, but those of us that have had these experiences get irradiated with that. And when I get around another contactee, I can sense it. I mean, and so sometimes I get around some of these people and around some of those contactees or some of the attendees especially, I could pick up a lot of this Artron energy coming off them. But then I come around some of these people that are so well known in these fields, these big time contactees, and I don't feel it at all. That's a problem. Why am I not feeling any Artron energy on them? It doesn't mean they're not contactees, but something's off.
Right. Right. No, there is. And I mean, I remember sitting on a panel that you were on, and looking at, a couple of these people, and it was like looking at them and they look like they're, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like their eyes were just hollow, and it's like there was such a blackness in them, and which just is evident to me, I mean, through some of their actions and things, but it's just like, you can just sense that and see it. And the more you're, and the more you're exposed to it at different conferences and things, I mean, you just sit back and watch people and the way they behave and the way they treat the people that are lining up to buy their books and all of these things. And you just think, yay, I don't know. And I don't understand, like I was saying at the beginning of the show, why some of these event organizers are promoting people that are clearly, they clearly haven't done any background research on, but
it's a shame, because I was, for a long time, a lot of people considered me affiliated with the individual.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I just lost you. Okay, hang on, folks. In fact, actually, I am going to go to a break because I lost Barry for a second. It's probably due to that windstorm. So I'm going to play a little music for you. And then on the other side of the break, we are going to get Barry back on the line and continue our conversation. But I just want to thank all of you again for your love, for your support, for hanging out with me on Friday nights, and for not being afraid to ask questions and understand that there is something real that we deserve, that it deserves study. But we aren't getting it. And so, we're going to work through this together. I appreciate your love and support. You can go to UFO Classified and become a supporter of the show. You can also get up at the top of Spreaker and follow and then share the information to other people. I really appreciate it. I love you guys. Thanks so much. We're going to take a break and get Barry back on the line. Okay, I am back, and that was Risa with Valente, and I just love this little kind of moody music, and I am not able to get a hold of Barry again. He was mentioning that he has a windstorm that is taking place there, and so hopefully we can get him back next week, or maybe even later this evening. But right now I'm going to try to bring in Phil Leach. So from one interesting conversation to another, and I apologize about that. So anyway, I want to, when Phil gets on there and is up and running, then we can give him a buzz and get him on. But first of all, I just want to say that I know, I'm very passionate and heated about specific things because I've seen firsthand, some of the hurt and things that have taken place as a result of people not standing up and doing the right thing in our community, in the, whatever it is, the UFO world. And because we're so willing to follow anybody who claims they've seen a UFO, we get into a lot of areas where we are potentially being victimized, and that isn't good for any of us. And so I definitely encourage each and every one of you to see very clearly who you are maybe supporting, who you are holding in high regard, and understand that there might be more that goes on behind the scenes with specific people or organizations. That really is something that is quite incredible. So anyway, that's my thought on that. So I'm going to try to give Phil a call, and we'll see if he's answering. And again, I apologize about Barry. Dang it. So we're calling Phil right now. He said to give him a minute, but this is, and he's not online yet. He is so rude. Ugh. Okay, well, Phil, let me know in chat when you get online. And we are going to, maybe talk a little bit about one of those dysfunctional organizations tonight, and a little bit more about that, because interestingly enough, we have not heard about what happened with the executive director after Jan Harzan, after there were reports coming out about him and he was arrested for soliciting a minor. And it brings me to another point, another area in the field where we really need to watch out for. When that news broke, I was absolutely amazed that there were people high up in the organization that were actually coming out on the internet and saying that he actually did not do anything that he was accused of, but that he was actually being framed because he was days away from releasing the most important UFO information in the world. Yeah, this seriously happened. And I just sat there and I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? So I don't even know what to say about this, but that again just kind of shows you how really stupid I think people are, and that other people in this organization should definitely stand up and kind of call that behavior out. I'm seeing a lot of people in MUFON kind of roll over and not necessarily do what they need to do as far as holding people's feet to a fire. So anyway, yeah, Phil, I'm not quite sure. And I wish, Jasmine, when we can get Barry back on, I'm going to see if he can get back on next week. And then I know that he had mentioned before the show started, he had mentioned his involvement with Corey Good. And I wanted him to kind of talk about, that with you. And I know you've asked that question. So I do believe that he has differing opinions, but I'll let him address that question next week when we get him back on for an hour to finish the show. And so I'm going to try to call again, Phil, but we will see if he's on there yet. Who knows? And if not, I might be calling one of you. Oh, Lord, I love technology. So I did talk to Barry, and he was saying that there was a windstorm that took out, he was texting me his internet and things like that. And so that is what the deal is. And so as we wait to get a hold of Phil, who hopefully is going to be popping up on his wife's face or Skype here in a minute, then we can, get that taken care of. But I also want to really quickly, while we're waiting for that, and I do believe, Peter, that there are some illustrations of Barry's sightings and different things that he has online. And so he does have a YouTube page. You can go in there and find that. And thanks, Sue, so much for giving that information. And Bruce, I'm not sure if Barry wants to divulge where he lives. It kind of sounded maybe not that he didn't. And so I'm not sure. But again, we will ask about that. And Sue, thank you for working on Phil again. Just so you know. Okay, so let me just talk a little bit about, Barry mentioned that, when you go to a UFO conference, you don't see people of color. And that is a simple fact. And it is quite interesting when you step back and look at it. So are aliens only interested in abducting white men? White women? I don't know, but it is curious. And so it is interesting when you've got somebody like Barry who's willing to come out. And there was also another person who I'm kind of digging into. And I am fortunate enough to have the Androphil Files, as most of you who follow me know, which is an incredible holding. I am so blessed. And she did a great deal of work with regard to a man by the name of Reverend Harrison Bailey. And in a bit of that, her research, which she spent years and years, they became friends. I just transcribed or took the audio cassette interview of Reverend Harrison Bailey that she did with him. And I am going to be able to play portions of that, which is really fascinating. But he was a young man in the military. And I'm going to read this a little bit from Androphil's Fate magazine article back in April 1978. It's Harrison Bailey and the Flying Saucer Disease is what it's called. In part one, in the woods near Illinois, an Illinois town, he encountered the UFO and its occupants, and his life was never the same. At 6 o'clock in the morning of September 24th, 1951, 24-year-old Harrison E. Bailey was hiking from Chicago along State Highway 7 towards Joliet, Illinois. A healthy, energetic man, he was engaged in the activity he liked best, walking. He had no way of knowing that by 4:30 that afternoon, his entire life would be changed forever. An encounter with an unknown, with 3 types of non-human beings, and the alien craft. An event perhaps unprecedented in UFO history would affect his body, his mind, and his attitude towards life. 3 years before, Bailey had invented an ingenious advertising gimmick, a huge 5-foot tractor tire, which he had painted green, and in the center of which he put signs promoting various products and public events. Over the years, motion picture theaters, clothing stores, soft drink companies, and various other organizations in and around Gary, Indiana's hometown, had hired him to advertise their products. And so, you've got, here's a bit of this story. And on this day in September, he was taking his tire out and was advertising. And he was, this great green wheel wore a sign that says, "Let's come through" in 52, St. Louis Browns. He was advertising his favorite baseball team as a moral building gesture. He had started walking from Gary on September 23rd and planned to finish on September 26th with a triumphant arrival in St. Louis, where Bill Veeck, owner of the Browns, would greet him. Bailey had taken long walks before with his advertising tire. He had long ago perfected an easy stride. So we are, okay, so let me just ask Lena Leach. Okay, so great. I'm going to get Phil on the phone really quick. He's here. But I want to just tell you, so Reverend Harrison Bailey had an encounter with these 3 occupants. And it is very interesting. And I'm going to tell you more about that along with playing you the tape of between him and Anne, and then also give a little bit more detail about his alleged sightings over the years. Like he said, like Ann said in the first part of this article, it really affected his life, but not only his life, his health, which is documented. So this is, really just incredible. So actually, and I think it looks like, okay, so I'm going to try, forgive me, you guys, I'm sorry. This is why I need a producer. But let me just see, we're going to try to make a call and see if it works, and you never know who we're going to get online. It's a mystery. Okay, and so we've got Barry back on the line. We were trying to get Bill, and I want to thank Sue for willing to step in. So, and Sue, I'm just going to get you and Phil on next week. Let's just plan on next week, Sue and Phil. That'll be good. So anyway, Barry, welcome back. I'm sorry about that. That was a little exciting, but everything's groovy now?
I just hope it holds out. So, okay.
We hope it holds out too, and I think that there's so many great questions people wanted to ask you in the chat room and things, and people were puzzled. And I had mentioned again, while I was trying to fill time and try to get whoever I could, either you back on or Phil, or and I was mentioning there's a fellow, and I'm going to be talking more about him. His name is Reverend Harrison Bailey, and he had a UFO sighting back in the 50s and had entity sightings, and he had very severe health problems, he believes, as a result of what he saw. He was a veteran, and was a black man. And so, here you have his important story, and I'm going to be talking more about that. And then hopefully in the, coming months, I can get you on to kind of weigh in about that, because it's a fascinating case. It's so cool. You'll be really excited about it.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So where were we?
Oh, I think we were just talking about individuals. I just said somebody that I know that did something really just negative, that they're claiming to be an empath and all that. But the point is that if I did something like that to someone, the beings that interact with me, it would just stop. It would stop. They wouldn't, you know what I mean? They don't seem to do with that type of negativity. It would just push their vibration away. But, I just hate to see people being deceived by so many of these media gurus,
It is sad, and I think you see a lot of women too that have had experiences that are flocking to some of these conferences and end up just becoming groupies. And so you have, people that are, it's, and that's a dangerous thing. It's like having some of these, you mentioned yoga and some of these gurus that we see, and some of these cult leaders. Ramtha, who, again, that's another story, but you've got these people in these positions of power, and they take advantage of people that are looking for something, looking for answers to questions. And I think that was, I think that it's wrong. And hopefully by both of us shining a light on that, some people will be able to maybe at some point in time feel like they can find a safe community where they will be protected. And that is, a really important thing.
That's important. That's important. And, because I met so many good people at those conferences, the attendees. That's really where it's at. So I always want to encourage them to keep talking amongst themselves, to keep coming forward, and, keep changing things. It's important. It's really important.
It is important. And I want to just ask you, because one person in chat wanted to find out about were you in a movie with Corey Good?
Actually, I did a video on my YouTube channel. I've done a lot of work on YouTube and on Patreon. On my YouTube channel, I did a Black Extraterrestrial video with Corey when we spoke together at the Asceti Ranch in 2019. There was a movie I did it's Cosmic Secret, I think it's called. It was something I did when I was at the ranch. I'd interview with these people, several people, but that was one group. Gentleman named, I think his name was Roger, and it wound up being on the Top Secret of Top Secret. And I think that's Corey and maybe David Wilcox thing, I guess. But hey, it was cool. It was nice to do it. It was really well done as far as what I participated in. So that was cool.
And so, because, Corey is I mean, there's probably no doubt that there might be some questions surrounding him and David Wilcox and some of their ideas on things. And I know that they both have and I'm not sure if seems like they've kind of backed off the scene a little bit, but I'm not quite sure about that because I, typically try not to pay attention.
Without getting too deeply in it, what I see happening though with, there's lawsuits, there's all this stuff going on, and it's really disheartening in terms of it takes away from the main objective, which I said is to change our daily lives and to change our society. And that's just, for me, it's really disheartening to see all that, and it takes off the track. And that's why I really steer away from all the SSP and the government conspiracy stuff. And don't get me wrong, I'm not putting down anybody that's had those type of experiences. I know they're real. I feel for those that have been traumatized by that, but my experiences have not been like that. Mine were all positive, of a positive nature. So, but when you see stuff like that, it's like, wow. And I mean, it's all over, like this community itself, especially the ufology community. It's like it's imploding or something. You see that?
Yeah, I mean, I really think everything's kind of doing that, and it is really sad to see some of the. I mean, it's, now that I look at some of the videos that are out there now, and some of these people are freaking absolutely insane, and they're bringing on guests that are equally insane, and that are claiming to be, I don't know what, like a super soldier from Germany.
Wait a minute. That's what I didn't tell you. I didn't get to talk about that. The truth is, I'm a super soldier. I went to Neptune and I killed 1,000 reptilians. No, I'm just kidding. That's not.
People will believe that.
I mean, but that's the stuff that sells right now. And I mean, I've had so many people contact me that claim to be part of the super soldier program. All I say is my Lord, the government can't do no better than that. Come on. I mean, it comes to a point, though, like I was saying earlier, people get indoctrinated with so much of this media stuff, and that's what we hear about, SSP, conspiracies. And then what happens is that actually infiltrates your brain, and then when you're having some type of a psychic experience with other beings, maybe even higher beings, this is actually interpreting and interfering with the way you're perceiving the experience itself. We can project our own phantasmagorical images and other things quite easy. So it's just, food for thought if nothing else. So, and I'll say this in final about asking about that movie. That's interesting. That's actually come up about the last 3 days. I've been asked that a few times. They must be showing it. Anyway, my platform is my own. Okay. I don't stand with anybody in that way. There's a few people I will work with. I've been on their shows or something, but my platform is my own. So that way I don't want to be accused of being part of anybody's, whatever these things are, cults or whatever it is these people are doing. So, and I don't mean any disrespect to anyone, but I just stand on my own.
Well, I would say that's a safe place to be. I mean,
well.
Right.
I mean, I'll tell you, it's just a tragedy because all of that really damages the credibility of the field, and it damages the real information trying to get out.
Absolutely, and you have to wonder, what was there ever any credibility in the field? You know, I mean, because
good point.
You know, I mean, like, I just kind of, as I look back, and I'm, like I said, I'm so lucky to have the amazing archive that I do, and I can go back there and, I mean, look at some of these books that were put out by some of the early contactees, and you just think, whoa, I mean, this is just, you know, kind of frightening. And then, you know, you look at some of the, I've got a collection here of articles that is just absolutely hysterical. But you've got, you know, back in the olden days, back in the 70s, here was, you know, a headline that's saying abducting Earth women and forcing them to have sex. You know, that's one headline, and that's actually from '93. And then you've got another. This is a good one. Space aliens. Space aliens are kidnapping our women and forcing them to have sex because they want to produce a hybrid being. And then you've got this little quote.
That already happened. The Bible says that's Nephilium. That already happened, didn't it?
Well, you know, according to...
Oh, I'm just saying.
Mamacita.
You know, it's too bad because I think to a degree it's a shame because, you know, you do have something going on as far as our genetics are constantly being messed with. This planet is obviously a laboratory of some sort. And I think you have, you know, Homo sapien might be being replaced or being modified to some degree.
What about Homo sapien sapien?
Oh, man. You know, I mean, when I was a kid...
Sorry, I just have to say that because it makes me laugh.
I used to watch this thing called The Tomorrow People as a kid.
Yeah.
It used to be on Nickelodeon. And I think that's what they called them, the people of the future. They're Homo sapien sapien. Or
well, I've seen that in a few
Homo
videos
superior
people
or
put out.
Like
oh, my God.
Anyway.
I swear, Barry...
But I think that when looking at this planet, though, and you've got these weird creatures that in the fossil record or just dismissed as myth or cryptids, and you have things that just appear here and then disappear, they're every sign of this being some type of a laboratory for several different species, for all across the galaxy, you know, and more than that, I think it's more of a prison place too. And I hate to say that, but there's a problem. I don't know how you feel about this, but a lot of people I talk to, myself including, think that we're, to a certain degree, immortal souls, that the soul is immortal. But how is it you incarnate here devoid of soul life memories? What kind of crap is that? That's like going, you're about to graduate a senior in high school, but you can't remember kindergarten to like 11th grade. What is that?
Yeah.
You know, that's not benefiting you. And that's an issue. And I think how it leads the possibility that so many of us have been caught in some type of a reincarnation cycle and reincarnate here again and again and again and are unaware of it. That's serious. That's a problem. Am I right? Maybe, maybe not. But nonetheless, the possibility is too large. Too great.
Mm-hmm,
Sorry.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Sorry, that's good. We're getting away from talking about UFOs and extraterrestrials.
Oh, well, this usually happens on UFO Classified.
Yeah. See, what I say doesn't always sell because the beings I've seen were not reptiles. They weren't grays. And experiences just weren't like that.
And it wasn't David Wilcox.
Yeah, they weren't military, you know. They didn't have a sexual connotation to them. You know, it wasn't like that. So I'm not dissing those that have had those. I think they're very real, but there's a whole lot of us that have had something different that has happened.
And so, you know, I mean, it's you know, people want proof. You know, what proof do you have that this actually happened?
You know, for me, like most, I have absolutely zero. But I can tell you one thing. From the time even I've been speaking, which I started speaking on this in 2014, just after my mother died. And I use science a lot. And anybody who's really followed me and what I've said, scientifically, what I've been shown and what I've been able to back up and understand, now science is catching up with things that I've been talking about for a long time. For example, I've been saying how much these craft, part of the composite that they're composed, part of the material they're composed of is a fungus. there are other materials such as amorphous metals and things like that, but there are also funguses combined in there with the DNA of the crew, and that gives the crew a symbiotic connection with the craft, and how the craft itself, the inside, was organic, similar to like a toadstool or a mushroom, but harder consistency. I've been talking about that a long time. Now, if you check it out, they're using mycelium and fungus types of mushrooms to repair bridge structures, infrastructures on buildings. And now NASA is talking about building habitations for the astronauts made out of fungus, out of mushrooms, like mushroom houses to a degree, made of that type of material. So how is it things like this that I've been talking about, or the buckyball? Anybody knows what a fullerene is? I've shown an engine that was using a fullerene to channel orgone energy since 2014. And now our science has found the buckyball, the fullerene. So it's things like that scientifically I can see us catching up to that mesh with my experiences. So that's the only real evidence I have, but as far as getting some material or something off one of those craft, every time I've been on board one of those physically, the 4 times I've been on board, 5 really, but it's this sickness. And they were telling me temporal aphasia, because the inside and outside of the craft are not in the same dimension. And inside some of these crafts, a lot of contactees will tell you, there's this mist that makes it hard to breathe. And number 2 is it's like sometimes the rooms are almost moving around you. It's very easy to slip into another room and you get very dizzy because it's off kilter. So that's one thing there that made it impossible for me to try to grab anything and steal anything. I'm barely able to hold my cookies when I'm moving around in there.
So were you awake?
I was young at that point. Too.
Were you awake, or were you asleep, or what? Describe the events that led up to each of these experiences.
Well, one would be like the first time, the adult onset experiences. I was dating this gal from Israel, and I was trying to actually we're going out to the country. My suggestion was, quote unquote, meditate. We're like 17. Yeah, what are those deals? But we get it.
Good one.
When we get out there, yeah, we start actually meditating, and the meditation got really, really deep. Individually, that is. And then I opened up my eyes, and we're parked by this pond, and this craft pulsates in division over this pond. And then pretty much it took me on board with this light, levitated me into the craft itself. So that's, it's things like that you don't exactly forget. But the further you get away from it, the more scattered it is, and like the beings you saw and everything. So for me, I'll just tell you what it seemed like to me is always like a field trip. But I was one of those kids during a field trip you wouldn't have liked, when the one's going, oh, what's that? What's that? What's that? I was one of those kids running around, running off. I was one of them. So to me, these experiences felt somewhat like a field trip. But being in the presence of non-humans is somewhat disconcerting, and dealing with that sickness is a real problem on board. And when I say that sickness, it's combined with when you're in presence of one of these beings, they're communicating with you telepathically, really a telethought that is very fast. It's not like just people and humans do it. You think of somebody and then they call. That's basic human telepathy. Not like that. This is different. This is telethought that comes with emotion and telepictures. They come fast too. So I don't think download is the best word. It's like just an open blasting of frequency to me.
And so when you were, feeling sick, did these effects last after you came home?
No, actually after the experience itself was over, I felt a great deal of elation, which I'd say lasts about probably 12 hours or so. You're just kind of hyped. And then you crash out for like, a great tiredness comes later on. But for me, after each experience, I was always highly elated. And I think that has something to do with being around the beings themselves, the high energy, the vibrational difference. And the Hindus, some of the gurus they have something they call Shakti Pat, which is where the guru touches the apprentice and gives them a Kundalini release, and all the chakras start moving. So it's called Shakti Pat. A lot of those apprentices would just be around the guru for years, hoping they would be granted Shakti Pat. I think when being around some of these higher beings that I've been around gives you a type of a Shakti Pat, just being in their presence. Because it's like, you have to think about what is it like when you have a different consciousness. A consciousness is using a different container of a different frequency, of a different energy, one that's higher, faster than us. That's what I think you're dealing with.
Well, it is, yeah, that is very interesting. And I think the Kundalini energy and different things is in that kind of the Kundalini rising and things. I find that fascinating. I was really into kind of studying that and practicing Kundalini yoga for a while. And boy, that's a trip.
Well, the crafts I've been on board, that's what they're running on, is a type of energy, and I think when we're dealing with that, because actually what they are conscious quantum waves. They're conscious waves. And they're dealing with different resonant frequencies. See, some of those frequencies will be one we'd be similar, we'd know as orgone energy or as Kundalini, aka prana. This is life energy. And that shows you how some of these beings are actually connected with the craft itself. I can give you an example. What they were telling me, what these crafts are composed of, is one, these amorphous metals that are mined from planets that are devoid of Van Allen belts and sometimes atmospheres. The solar radiation that hits the metals on planets like that gives them a durability we're not familiar with here. And they'd use that, and then DNA from the crew, then this fungus. And these things are all combined and then grown over this wormhole in space. The same way that they're starting to put glass together in space here now that has great durability. So that's what this is, but that shows how the crew, through DNA and also through life energy, are not just the navigators, they're also the power source to a degree. Make sense? Yeah. It's just weird because right now our science hasn't gotten to that type of organic components yet. And I was speaking, trying to tell people and put this in a different modality. Well, looking at organic craft, like I just described, think about like really symbiotically the connection that this craft would have with the tree system of this planet. It takes the Avatar movie to a different degree, but that would be the way they communicate. Or something else is that sometimes these ships will go down into Earth and we think, oh, it must be a base, or, oh, Admiral Byrd, the hollow Earth. Let's get away from that and talk about what science has showed us, what is called the Deep Biosphere. And the Deep Biosphere contains 95% of Earth's undiscovered bacteria. So when you're using a craft that is fungal or have bacterial components, a perfect place to deal with the Earth and to use would be the Deep Biosphere. But you see, we're not thinking about that because that type of information isn't coming through because we're too worried about SSSP and other things like that. You know what I mean?
It is fascinating to me that, we just get so distracted with stuff that is put out there. And so I wanted to, ask you, because we're talking a little bit about Skinwalker Ranch, and I want to get your thoughts and feelings about what you perceive is going on at Skinwalker.
At Skinwalker. Wow. Outside of TV, TV presents it one way, but what I've wondered is how much that place has in common with the Asceti Ranch as far as property itself. Skinwalker Ranch, I kind of think that one is you've got some type of a government installation going on underground, I think, that's been there for a long time. Maybe technology that was already present that they've been messing with now. And two, I think it's one of those areas that's on some type of a grid where you've got a lot of portals that open up and close there. But, then again, Asceti is one of those places, too, where you've got these portals that open and close. And I also think there's a device there that's messing with people, too. But I don't call it messing, but altering people's perception. Let's call it that.
And what makes you think that?
My first year at Asceti 2016, I had a few things happen that just blew me away. And I thought I'm not a young cat, so I thought my years of having physical experiences were past me, and I see I was wrong. But one thing is, before I went out there, and a year before I met you, 2017, 2 weeks before I went out there for 2017, I did a professional regression, specifically for the weird events that happened to me at that ranch. I wanted to know what I was dealing with before I went out there the second time. And what I came out in this regression is something I had been seeing anyway, but it's this crystalline device that sits in that mountain. And that mountain has a light that everybody says is a dimensional portal. This thing sits a little bit higher than it, and I'm describing it in my regression really good. And it got me really curious on it. And then I find references to a device like this in a book called The Keys of Enoch by J.J. Hertog. They mentioned something called an OR station, OR station, and they talk about what it does, and they even give some pictures of it being some type of a crystalline device, similar to what I saw. Then fast forward it 2 years later, I see a video on YouTube called The Ancient Aliens of the Asceti Ranch, done by a gentleman named John Vivinco, who has a remote viewing team. He's really good at it. And his team is describing this device inside the mountain, this crystalline device. This is 2 years later. They're seeing it also. So the main thing I wanted to do is when I went to SETI in 2019 was not just make a black extraterrestrial video, but I also wanted to talk to John Vivinco and show him the schematics and things from this book and how they're describing this device and how it's actually multidimensional. And he was pretty amazed by it. So that's another video that's on my channel under the playlist, the Asceti Ranch. But that's what gives me that idea. So my question started becoming this device is what I thought it was doing was it's scanning people's life memories, and then it produces something, an orb. Everyone sees orbs out there. Catch them in pictures all the time. It produces some type of an orb that gets in our biofield and changes our perception. And quantum physics-wise, they have put even black holes attached to our individual molecules. So to put an orb, it would have to be almost microscopic to still change our perception. And one last thing, and something to kind of confirm this, and this was in, this was 2017 when I met you. We had to do those god-awful sky watches. Every presenter had to do a sky watch. And, I've never done a sky watch, Erica. I'm not into those. No disrespect to people, but for me, when those craft come too close and suddenly you're missing like 4 or 5 hours of your life, and it's disconcerting. So my calling in craft has not been my biggest want. But what I did for this was I wanted everybody to do, for me, it's a pranayama exercise. It's a pineal gland exercise to decalcify your pineal gland. Mm-hmm. And if you remember it looks very odd. I had a hard time showing it to people. But when people are actually doing it, and it's interesting because the attendees are the people that tend to be your mediums, your clairvoyants, your psychics. And we get done doing this exercise because I figured it would allow people to perceive ships better when we go out into the field. But as soon as we're done with this exercise, a lot of people are saying, I'm seeing this grid. I'm seeing this grid. And they're describing this grid that's going so far out.
That's interesting.
And what I believe that is the same grid that is being produced by this OR station device in that mountain that is scanning people. And that's what they're seeing is that field. Now, I don't know how far out it goes from that mountain and beyond Asceti itself, but that's what I believe people were seeing is that grid. That's what they were describing. And I pretty much had theorized that, but to see it actually manifest like that, You know what I mean? It was a different deal. I knew there was some type of a field that was scanning people's life memories, and then let's say that it does something to push their perception further with these orb technology. So let's say you never seen a Bigfoot. You know what I mean? For me, I never seen a cat being. I've dealt with the energy on board one of these craft that felt feline-like, but it was disembodied energy. It wasn't a physical being, but I never seen a cat being, and I wanted to know during this regression what happened when the first night I was at Asceti in 2016. The ships came so close. I was out in the field by myself at like 3 o'clock in the morning. These ships come so close. I was just standing out there. And this lady from New Zealand just left me standing out there. I said, why did you leave me standing out there? She said, well, it seemed like you were just supposed to be out there. And these things got so close and put on such a show, what the Native Americans called dancing. It's like they were dancing. I had to know what was on board that because I couldn't seem to tune into it right here in the third dimensional during the experience. I'm trying to psychically and telepathically tune in, but I can't quite get through. So in the regression, I wanted to see what did my superconscious see.
And I
my
want to
subconscious see.
I want to just
and it turns out being a huge bobcat-looking creature on board this craft.
And so I want to just, and sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to just say, for me, looking at and having done a lot of work on Skinwalker Ranch and some of these, technologies that our government has and contractors have. To me, I am wondering if what isn't taking place there is actually some sort of testing. And what a perfect place. What a perfect way to do it. You're already testing on people that are, if they went to tell anybody about it, they'd be labeled, crazy.
You mean like giving like psychic projections and things like that?
Doing all sorts of things, and perhaps some of the objects that are being witnessed over the ranch could be some sort of terrestrial technology.
Similar. I had wondered that too because something else had happened the first year. Before I go up there, Erica, about a week before, I started just obsessing about albino Sasquatch. And I started looking up everything online about albino white Sasquatch.
Well, I have to say that's a little strange.
Well, it's completely. That Bigfoot wasn't really my thing. I was hanging out with my brothers one day. Hey, what are you doing? You keep looking at the computer. I'm looking at this thing on Sasquatch.
Interesting.
And then I get there, and to be honest, like I said, I'm from their capital, the middle of the United States, and I was unprepared for. I've not been to that side of the United States, and I was unprepared for truly how remote that ranch kind of is up there in the mountains. And as soon as I get to the gate, I feel like I'm being watched. And then I get there, and one of the conditions for a brother speaking out there is a brother's not real into camping. So a brother doesn't want to do the tent or none of that. So I needed facilities, a real facility to stay in. And so they put me in the back of the property and in this yurt. And, the second night I was there, during the day, there are these trees are like pushed over behind it. And then after the conference is over, this rock is put on my doorstep. And all this weird stuff starts happening. I feel like I'm being watched out there. I can't sleep at night anyway. So it's a miserable out there, 3 o'clock in the morning. It's real active. Feel like you're being watched by the trees. It's a very odd place out there. So I question if the Sasquatch activity, and so many people will say they see one crossing the field and it disappears. I'm like, are these projections being made by that device? See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because at that place, the owner's described to me how much military action is around that mountain. So it makes you wonder, do they know what's there and they can't stop it? Are they trying to gain access to that device? Because I think that device is ancient, Erica, and something that I think there's several of them around the planet, like probably one in Mount Kaligash in Tibet. I kind of wonder about Mount Shasta. I'm not sure. But I think there's several of these devices, and when you get the right person with the right resonant frequency around it, soul frequency, these things activate.
Well, it's interesting because like I said, the more I look at things and I I have to question what is man-made and what, and that stinks. But I think places like that, and especially with him mentioning the military presence around there, I mean, what is that about? And it really would be a perfect group of people to go in and do a little testing on. So you just don't know. But
the one thing that helps maybe with the Asceti Ranch, I don't know about Skinwalker, but you've got so many Native Americans that talk about that mountain for so long before probably government was even around. So that's one thing. But I don't know about the Skinwalker Ranch if it has been dated with phenomenon that far back, or if that's something that's more modern.
You know what? I mean, I think that the people that are helping, craft the ongoing myth of that area are trying to say that it goes back. And of course, it's like you can say it goes back, here. We've got this great story we just uncovered, but again, where's the proof? I mean, they're saying that all of this, and then with relation to Skinwalker Ranch, you've got the person that owned it before the Shermans bought it that was saying that they were there for a long, long time, saying that there was nothing ever going on here. Nobody ever saw a thing. And so are these places where you've got a military on the periphery, and are there places where they're creating or helping to just kind of craft and play on people's belief systems in the area, and then as a result they create this big myth and everybody's jumping to that, it's a UFO, it's not some sort of test of that's causing cancer or causing MS or just different types of things, and it really is a very convenient playbook that I think has probably been used more than we wanted to realize, and it's being promoted by some of the leaders in the UFO world.
You said a key word there that really stuck out to me. You said promoting the myth that is that place. So a lot of what we're seeing at Skinwalker is strictly man-made installations or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why you get quiet all of a sudden?
Yeah,
So basically, I should be watching that show much more, huh? That's what you're telling me. And I noticed that one or two of the ranch hands out there had gotten really sick, and he said that it was from digging on the property or something. Well, but in reality, if there's some type of radiation going on out there,
right. Which, they're probably. I think there's a whole bunch of reasons, why the no digging thing. But it is interesting, though, that there was a big, huge, bulldozer on the ranch that was there during the Bigelow days. So yeah, no digging, but whatever. So I don't know.
One question to you. One thing that does interest me, okay, is because at that Asceti Ranch, I had some type of an experience with something that was some type of a shapeshifter. And it was so odd, it completely stopped my perception for a few minutes. So are there any type of creatures or beings out there on that ranch, in your opinion? Or is that just hype? Or is that some type of government, or I don't keep using that word, is it some sort of like experiments they're releasing out there, something like that? What do you think it is as far as the entities that are reported out there?
I don't think, this is a difficult, it's interesting because I have been there. I have stood around the property. I have had an experience that I am still like, what in the world was that?
Can you tell me what it is?
Oh,
what it was?
Gosh,
Please?
So I went up there, and I was interviewing Junior Hicks, and I decided I know somebody up in the area who's given me information, and I've interviewed this person's friends and family for a long, long time over the years to make sure I keep touch with them and see what the story is and health updates and things like that. And so he had just given me a great location to go view things. And so a person, my friend and I went out there, and of course, it was just a perfect evening to go out there because there was a lightning storm rolling through. And I've got a ton of great pictures of lightning over Skinwalker Ridge. And it was just, you stand there and you go, God, and you've got this, at that point in time, I was still living in this world of, this is the most paranormal hotspot, on the planet. And even though actually I was kind of getting over that one because I knew about other places where there were things that were being actually researched by science. But, I saw this, it was like a mist that, I would see, and it was just after dark, and it was coming from the old homestead where all the radiation apparently is happening. And I saw it and I'm like, okay, is this, are my eyes playing tricks on me? Because it almost looked like there was smoke that had settled in that area, and my friend could see it, and we watched this, and it appeared to grow in size, and it appeared to approach us, and then it approached us and it engulfed us, and it's like the temperature dropped, the sound was muffled, then that happened, and it was just like this electrical, it was so odd, and that happened several times. And we sat there and took photos and recorded the event and different things so I could remember what our feelings were at the time of that this was happening. And then at one point I noticed above the line, the mesa, there was an amber orange sphere that was hovering there. And, I've got my binoculars, I'm looking at it, it's not an airplane, blah, 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 blah. And so I watched that, and it was quite large. And then there was another one that appeared below it, and at one point, it looked like there was some sort of, something moving between them, some light moving between them. And, okay, could it be ball lightning? I don't know. It was a very strange thing, and we watched this and we're in such a stupor. Literally just a daze after that happened, and we went back, and it's like, what was that? It was odd. And I came home after that experience. Both the person I was with and myself, we slept for days. And I felt like I'd been, I was so drained of energy. I was just almost physically sick. And we had both some interesting experiences with electronics and different things after that event. But it was one of those things that just kind of like, what the heck happened? And, now that I'm understanding some of the technology that could potentially could be being tested on the ranch in a real life scenario. Some of this stuff mimics some of the things that we know about, but just imagine what we don't know about with regard to our technology and things. And so it was very, the whole thing was very, very strange, but I definitely suspect that in the case of Skinwalker Ranch in that area, the military's been involved in and around that area, I think, for decades. And there is, I truly feel that some really bright person who is probably involved in psychological warfare helped create that myth, because it was playing upon belief systems in the area. And then because that myth was created and inserted into the narrative, you've got, all of these reactions that happen. And you have a great cover for people that could potentially be experiencing the effects of radiation or different things. And that is my take. So I just have a hard time.
So that smoke that mist you described, it didn't feel alive. It felt more chemical. Or did it feel like it could be actually an entity or something, a life form?
You know what? I mean, to me, I felt at that moment, and I think it's because maybe that's where my mind was, because I had bought into the myth. You know, I thought it was some sort of, I felt then that it was some sort of living, like almost the ranch's natural, like a protection, like a security, kind of coming out to see what was going on and then moving back in. And
wow.
You know, it was a trip, and I don't, but like I said, now that I know what's going on. I know some of the people involved. I know that their backgrounds have, you know, been in psychological warfare, in weapons testing, yada, 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 that I have a lot of questions about what that was. And it really, that makes me, it makes me angry because, you know, I've had experiences in my life. You have. I think all of us listening to the show have had experiences at some level. And for people to develop technologies that mimic the paranormal and play upon us in that kind of a way is just really, it's disturbing.
Disconcerting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's disconcerting. Very much so. Very much so. You know, and it takes us to that whole thing of, you know, directed energy weapons, but also, you know, they were using, I think it was terahertz radiation, like weapons, dishes and stuff to try to bring craft down. So, you know, you've got probably maybe all those things that are in action out there. And not to mention what they can do with this new scalar technology and these different scalar frequencies. It is definitely disconcerting.
I know it is. And you mentioned, you know, directed energy weapons. And interestingly enough, there was the solicitation sheet for the OSAP contract, which is the $22 million that was given from the Pentagon to allegedly conduct UFO research, which is a load of crap. In that, it specifically states that one of their purposes was directed energy and RF weapons. You know, and it's like, how can you read this? Anybody with a logical thought process, how can you read the solicitation sheet and tell me it has to do with extraterrestrials? Give me a break. But people do. People like to believe that because they've been so brainwashed and can't think for themselves. They just, you know, automatically go to the, and that's what's crazy. Like, people would rather believe the extraterrestrial thing and believe,
yes,
you know, that people are jumping from Mars to this, you know, room over here. And, you know, I mean, you know, they believe the craziest stuff, yet they won't believe the facts that are put before them.
Yes. And it's you know, it's really a shame, you know, that, that's going on, but that's a way to also subdue and make a lot of people try to subdue, you know, their natural psychic abilities, their natural mediumship abilities. All these things are to suppress the race itself and to keep everyone trapped, you know. And it's, speaking of entities, whether we want to call them interdimensional or whatever, but dark beings, evil beings that ingest life energy or luminosity because they don't make it themselves, meaning that they feed on awareness. That is a serious problem when we're not in our bodies. We have to be aware of these beings that can do that. So, you know, when you start dealing with that and entities that are like that, and you see how that manifests really here in the third dimension. Isn't it just crazy? I mean, some of these entities incarnate here just like you and I, and they're running things.
Yeah.
And you know, and so that dark level, like so many things we see, like industries are just so dark here. And, you know, so that's not to say, you know, it's just a very serious problem, especially when we face the death force. You know, I'll say something else. This is going way far off a little bit. Some of the work I do that I don't talk about a lot is, you know, I do hypnotist myself, but I don't talk about it a lot because it's not me comfortable doing other people. I was always trying to self-hypnotize myself to get, you know, life memories and more past life memories and stuff like that. But when you start taking clients deep, it doesn't take much to start finding out that they're walking around with dead people attached to them, earthbound spirits. And several clients, I've crossed over as much as 9 or 10 deceased people that were attached to them. And for me, at first it was disconcerting because I can, perceive as a medium, I can perceive entities, earthbound spirits or dead people that are attached to the outside of people's energy field. But these are different. They're entwined into the person's energy field. And more than that, they're living through negative patterns, behavior patterns that the client will start exhibiting. And you got a number of things that stop people from crossing over. Either it be, food, sex, property, hatred, substance abuse. That's a big one. And just dying in shock. But these are things that make people run from the light when they're actually deceased. They get away from it. And I hear so many people saying now, oh, don't go to the light. The light's a trick. And that's a whole thing that's come up in the New Age communities that I tell you, that's some bad advice. Because what happens, there's a difference in light. You have the light of the sun, a life-giving light. You have the light of the moon that's somewhat cold. Use your discernment. But these entities, these people that run from the light, the earthbound spirits I've dealt with, the majority of them, I'm not talking about demons here, I'm talking about earthbound spirits. Most of them cross over fairly easy, which is surprising because you could definitely say they're lost souls. A lot of them will describe the same thing, darkness, and then they see a light on somebody and they merge with it. But you've also got people that die in the hospital, and then they they roam the hospital, they find the incubator room, and those children don't have a solid energy field yet. As parents, we still have to protect them till they get a certain age energetically, and they merge with these children. And it could be a man that's merged into a female's energy field, and that child grows up, with having tendencies of the other sex and being confused or whatever the case is, or something similar to that. Or this individual might have been the same sex, but they were an alcoholic. And the main thing they stayed here is they want another drink. And then when this individual becomes a teenager, they can't wait to get a drink. You know what I mean? They don't even know why. But this is very serious. And I'm seeing this right now. We'll say this before I shut this up. I think that the earthbound lost souls are as numerous in population on this planet as the living. It's a very serious problem. That's all I'll say. I mean, to where it shocked me when these just kept coming out of clients, these dead people will come out and start talking to you. A couple of them cussed me out. You didn't know I was here. You didn't know I was here. Well, not exactly, but I do now. You got to leave. You can't stay in this person's body. And they start fighting, but then, some of them for various reasons. It's very interesting. And it was somewhat shocking to me that I just couldn't perceive them from the outside, because they're too much in the person's energy field. They're already disembodied. That's enough. And then they're living through negative behavior patterns.
Interesting.
So that's just what. So when I say this, I'm only going over this because this planet is messed up, and there are these layers. That's one layer has to be gone through before you even go to the lower levels. That are, these demonic forces that are haunting people and attaching to people. That's a problem too. But I mean, you've got just these different levels, but we need to start with the disincarnate people. And I find it disconcerting when I hear a lot of these people claiming, I'm a medium, but they never describe what we're talking about right now. They talk about soul contracts and all this other stuff, this new age, but they're not talking about the earthbound spirits that we're talking about right now that are entwined in people's energy field, sometimes from nearly their birth. And that goes into past lives too. You have a spirit that's going after somebody from a past life. They know this person from a past life. But that's a problem if you don't believe in past lives, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
How are you going to therapeutically going to deal with that? Anyway, sorry, that's going off topic here. We talk about extraterrestrials, and that's
but it's interesting, and there's so many areas to talk, so many things to talk about, and so many. I mean, but I think at the end of the day, it's like I know and you know that we're, that what we know now about our world around us, seen and unseen, is just a drop in the bucket as to what is actually, we will discover, and so we really can't, we have to be thoughtful and logical and not jump off too big of a bridge, but we also have to understand that there is something, but what, and things. And so I appreciate you sharing your stories with us tonight. And then,
thank you.
Yeah. And also it was really important for you to address some of the racial issues, which I feel, again, at the end of the day, in this community, like I said at the beginning of the show, I mean, there's a lot of racism in a community that's supposed to be full of love and light, and a lot of hate, and a lot of people that are, not wearing masks, for God's sakes, because they think it is their, God-given right to go out and infect other human beings, and not do the right thing. And I just think, oh God. But so we've got a lot of work to do in the community. And we got a lot of things, and I appreciate your willingness to do that. And where can people find you?
Real quick on that too, it's just I've seen it, and it's the crowd, and things can change and are changing. So I don't want to seem like I'm totally pessimistic, but I've seen, the problem with that, and there's also a problem gender-wise, how women are treated in these fields. Yes. It's horrible. Horrible. So all that has to change. As far as me, you can find, I've actually got a website, barrylittleton.com, but it pretty much sucks. I haven't got it really designed that great. Mostly I do, it does have links to my social media on there, though. I do a lot of work on YouTube, got several hundred videos on there under just Barry Littleton. I also do a Patreon channel under Barry Littleton on Patreon that probably has close to 100 videos on it that are not on YouTube. So that's how I've been doing a lot of my work there, and you can find me there. And I respond to a lot of people on Patreon. It kind of gets rid of the trolls a little bit. So
that's good. Awesome. Thank you so much. And you stay safe, and we will talk sooner than later. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having me. Sorry about the interruption, too.
No, that was okay. We moved through it, and that was good. So I appreciate it, and thank you. And I want to just tell all of my listeners, please, make sure that you go up to the top of the Spreaker setting and make sure you like it, and then share the information about UFO Classified. I'm here every week, and I do a lot of work during the week on this topic because I believe it is important. I believe we need to know the truth, and I believe now more than ever we need to start seeing through some things that are not in our best interest that are being used. And the UFO subject is one of those that is being used to manipulate people. So on that note, you can show support for the show and help keep me on the air by going to UFOclassified.com, going to Patreon, and I appreciate your support. And next week I'm going to bring on Phil, my favorite troublemaker, Phil Leach, who was with MUFON, who broke some pretty big stories, and also Sue Gerberdine, who is also with MUFON. So they will be on. Much love to all of you guys. Stay safe. I appreciate your support. Thanks, Barry, and you guys have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.
So my skeptical mind, and that's just who I am. My skeptical mind goes to, well, yeah, of course, you've got this guy over here that's logical and reasonable, and you got this guy over here that's wearing a tinfoil hat. Of course, the tinfoil hat guy's gonna see a lot of stuff, right? He's like imagining it, or he's watched one too many sci-fi movies.
But it can be used to help us frame hypotheses for UFO propulsion, power, stealth, weaponry.
Everything that we experience is very positive.
Sometimes the field of ufology has a short memory span.
We didn't know anything about the $22 million back then. We just kind of thought, well, this is, and I think that was the reason why they were looking for military-type people, because in the military, you work with whatever you got, no matter what the situation is. You just kind of adapt and overcome.
What are you going to do with all this? You can't even take care of your own files and get them put into the current system, but yet you want to go collect other people's things. So what are you going to do with it? Who are you giving all this to?
It just really struck me about how the common thread seemed to be deception, but deception of human nature. So that's what I started thinking, who would these folks be? I mean, then I started thinking about the intelligence agencies, what role they could play, and what would be their motivations for getting involved in ufology.
I'm not saying that because the gimbal is not a rotating flying saucer, that means that all the UFOs are false. Not at all. All I'm doing is I'm looking at this one case, these individual cases, and seeing if there's an explanation for those. So try to, if I could ask people out there listening, don't think that I'm trying to attack your entire beliefs about these things.
Nice to be in orbit.